So it's been probably 6 weeks since we planted this high tunnel, and you can see some of our greens, carrots, Asian green spinach have germinated and grown pretty well. Our lettuces here, kale, and then you can see other rows where the seeding was not done as well, and so there's a couple pak choi there, but sparse. And then down in here gets a little inconsistent with our Swiss chard. There's one spinach, and then there's two more, and maybe one down there, and like a few kale. So depth of seed when you sow is pretty important, because then they can't compete with the weeds even if they germinate later. And so you can tell that this is all just weeds. In some spots there's nothing really made it here. There's a couple spinach, and then there's one more up there. So but here's arugula that did pretty good. This Asian greens mix was sowed well and probably viable seed. So today we're gonna harvest. I'm gonna show you how we harvest. All right, so now we're harvesting spinach. You can use scissors. This is a nice pear. I like to take it by each individual leaf, not just come across, so then the young leaves can regrow or get bigger. So I'm gonna come in, take all the biggest leaves as quickly as I can, stack them in my hand like this, and move on to the next plant. So a few more. Notice just the bigger leaves, and then the small ones will be big and ready to harvest in a couple days. Place them in your harvest bin, don't throw them. The more delicate you are with the greens, the better, because they'll bruise, break, tear, and the more you throw them around, the least amount of time that they will last. So that's how I'm harvesting my spinach. I'm gonna go down and do the rest of this row. So now we've harvested all our spinach. We're gonna move on to our Asian greens. This variety is called Mizuna, and with this stuff you can pretty much just cut it right across. There's still growth there that it will grow back. Make sure you avoid harvesting weeds. You just notice that one right there. So you can cut these right across. Just make sure you're not harvesting weeds and putting them in your salad mix. So see with this, for example, I'm cutting like halfway up. And see, there's the weeds right there. So just like that, come over here, there's even more, and come right across, just one flush cut. These ones are not like spinach. There's lots of young new growth down there that's gonna become bigger leaves that we can cut later. So that's why I like just going straight across with this stuff. So this is our harvest bin, and you can tell these leaves are radish leaves, and then these have been in here a little longer than I would like. Pretty big radishes. Radishes just pull right out of the ground rather easily. They normally take 28 days. These have been in here like 42. But you see there's some small ones that haven't grown as big, and that's because of the spacing. If you don't have proper spacing, they can't get big enough. So I'm gonna go through and harvest all my radishes, put them in this harvest bin, and I'm gonna move on to the next item. So see, they just pull up easily, and you can see when they're ready. You can see the size of them. They're growing above the soil. This one's definitely ready right there. Easy. So we got lots of radishes to harvest. So when you see this happen to our radishes, that's the product of being overripe, or in the ground too long before it gets harvested. It's called cracking. You don't want to see that. This is something that we won't keep. We'll just throw it in the compost pile. So here's our Asian greens mix. Again, this one you can cut, you pretty much cut it down low, but then you see all these weeds in here that are popping up. So that's the problem here, is that, you know, the more weeds in there, the more cautious you got to be, because you don't want to be harvesting weeds and then serving them to your customers or clients or whatever. So be diligent about making sure there's no weeds in it. And you can kind of come across, since there's a decent amount of weeds, I'm going a little higher than I would like on these with the cuts, but it's all going to grow back just fine. And see, before I dump them into the bin, I kind of just go like that, double check, make sure, and keep going. So with the bok choy, you can wait to take these as full grown, full plants and cut them right at the base, but you can also just cut right across and throw them into your Asian greens mix, and there you go, you got these nice big leaves. Still, again, making sure to not put any weeds in your mix. So these are really good greens, fresh tasting. And so now the last thing we have is this Lacinato Kale. Sometimes it's referred to as dinosaur kale. You can kind of come in and take individual leaves. That's your best bet. Although these ones, I'm sure, could still be cut straight across as well. It won't, you know, ruin the quality or anything, but you still got to worry about weeds in your mix. So with these, it's depending on how big your leaves are or how much you have. Typically you'll harvest the bigger leaves individually like that. See how these plants are a bit larger here, but you can also cut them straight across and they'll still grow back as long as there's a little bit of new growth down there. See that and that. So yeah, this is the quick way. That's quite a bit of kale already. So yeah, quick method compared to individual method. Kale and spinach are ones that a lot of times can be cut individually. It just depends how much you need really and how your plants look. Since these have tons of leaves right here, you can kind of come across the top, but normally you take the biggest. All right, so after I harvest anything, I need to weigh it and document how much I harvested and where it came from. So this is our scale here, and I keep my harvest notes here. You pretty much just have to put the date you harvested and then weigh your bags with the weights, and I do it in pounds. So these are our vented produce bags, and you can see there's perforated holes down each side there. That's because there needs to be air exchange when you put things like greens and radishes into your cooler. It can't just be airtight or they're gonna go bad quickly. And greens and our radishes, they all go in our 34 degree cooler. They store better at a lower temperature. And without these bags, you just put them out in the open in the cooler, the greens would go bad within a day or two. This was harvested about 4 or 5 days ago. Still pretty fresh. This is our Asian greens mix. And so after bringing it up, I just fill our bags with roughly a pound for these bags. We don't put much more than that in here, because you don't want the lettuce to kind of weigh down on the other lettuce that's on the bottom and make it go bad quickly. So I don't put more than a pound in here, and I weigh it all. See, that's about a pound, and then I write it down as I go until I get my total. So we had 1, 2, 3 bags of Asian greens that equaled 4.5 pounds. So see, I got the spinach, arugula, lacinato kale, Asian greens mix, and radishes. We had 27 pounds of radishes, which is quite a few radishes. So I would write that, document it, put it in the bag, tie it up. Not super tight, I don't need to take all the air out, but like that's pretty good. And then put it in our cooler. And make sure the lights are off. Cooler's a little messy. And that's that. So that's how we harvest things.